Hi, and thanks for joining me here in my shop. Today is the 7th of April, and I've just turned the radio on. We'll have a little listen to it again in a minute just to make sure that what I thought I was hearing at the end of the last video is true. I mentioned a website I encourage people to check out, especially Americans, and I may have misspoke on my last video, or I just didn't speak clearly. Google that, IHME. And you will find some very interesting and detailed and important information about what's going on in the United States. IHME. There'll be charts there, and there's also, you got to look for it a little bit, there's a summary or a journal, a daily journal, explaining what the statisticians are doing on a daily basis. So lots of other information in it. So you have these charts and also this other page, and lots of other information. I invite you to really study this web page, this information, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Now, let's listen to the radio here. So it's that swooshy sound, and I think, you know, what that says to me is based pretty much on recent discoveries with some radios that I recently worked on. And I think what that says to me anyway is the IF is oscillating in this radio, probably from some kind of accidental feedback from the output of the IF circuits back to the input, or it would still be the same thing, or something like a capacitor is failing to drain away or eliminate an RF signal where it should eliminate it, and that signal is getting on further into the radio gain, probably supporting this feedback deal. The feedback produces a signal that does not produce anything out of the speaker. You can't tell it's there, really. Maybe you can tell a little bit. If the IF is oscillating and the oscillation strength is going up and down, the AVC will go up and down as you tune around. You would notice this, but practically speaking, I think a problem like this could be in a radio, and the only way to really detect it is this heterodyne sound. Now, just listening to that, that sounds exactly like one of my best shortwave radios. My best shortwave radio has a very, very sharp tuning response. Here it is. It doesn't mean much when I draw it on a page like that, does it? But as you tune through it, you get that kind of sound, that swooshing sound as you tune up into it. And I can vary this, you know, and on this radio you can change this bigger if you want, or smaller, and that sound changes. Now, is that really what I'm hearing here? Am I fooling myself? This is nothing more than I really tightened up the IF tuning when I was messing around with it there. So there's another effect I can hear here. Again, in a lot of shortwave radios, they have a feature called a beat frequency oscillator, and it's another oscillator. It's usually in the IF range, I believe. Maybe it could even be an audio oscillator, but I believe they oscillate in the IF range, and it sets up this scenario you're hearing right now, where it injects another signal into the IF, one whose frequency you can move around. And this is useful for transmissions where the carrier has been suppressed, like single sideband transmissions. And so this BFO essentially takes the place of the carrier that's been suppressed in the signal that's being sent. When you're fiddling around with that control, it sounds a lot like this. Let me be more specific. If you have the BFO set so that its oscillation is exactly the same as the IF, when you tune in a signal, as you get it dead center, this oscillation, heterodyne oscillation that's been set up between the BFO and the incoming IF signal you're tuning in. The distance gets the separation gets less and less and less. The frequency comes down, down, down. It goes all the way down to, well, it eventually gets to essentially 0. Just before it gets to 0, you can kind of hear it. It kind of, I guess it's more a phasing thing at that point. The frequencies are the same now, and what's varying is the particular phase rather. You can hear this stuff.
Who have asthma and COVID-19 will end up needing an ICU bed.
Let's try another station here.
Contend if maybe one that gets to the lawyers is suspended, in the language of that means suspending all.
Now I'm not sure if there's really a problem in this radio now.
Of a franchise, like
other than maybe I've tightened up the response curve so much.
That's what the league office is contending suspended to. Now,
It's not so much that I would tighten it up. That's not quite the right word for it. So there's a number of tuned circuits in here. There's 2 IFs. There's the front end, and that's it. There's 3 of them in here. So if they're all lined up perfectly, like I've kind of drawn them here, then you get, you know, a really pointed top. But if these are a little off, if one of them's a little off to the side, like for instance, the last thing I was doing was adjusting the RF antenna adjustment. And so I was moving one of these around a little bit, and it had quite an effect. I'm going to explain that in just a second, what's going on in my head over that. But I think I may have taken them from being unaligned, so they're like this. When you add those together, you get kind of a flatter top thing. You know, just symbolically, or just as an idea to get in your head. I mean, my diagrams are crap here. So this wide thing is a lot different than having a little tiny sharp point. The sharp point makes the tuning like this.
A couple of things added to the CBA in order to get paragraph 16 of the standard player contract put down.
So another thing that's happening here with the sharp here. The sharp that I think I'm listening to. So if you think about the incoming signal, I'll draw it like this. It has a carrier, and then it has sidebands out here. And the radio, and this is out maybe 5 kilohertz, probably a little more. From there to there, probably a little more, probably more like 8 or something like that. And the radio is hopefully catching all that stuff. And you know, ideally it would look like this. The response curve would look like that, ideally. I have a radio that can do this, that can make a square response curve. And I think in the case of modern radios, this isn't a big deal, achieving a square response curve. Not that big a deal. So as you're doing the alignment, you're varying the size of this peak. You can get it so tight that all it catches is this. Now what happens if all it catches is that? Just in here. That doesn't catch these other sidebands. I've made my diagram really terrible to look at. So I have these sidebands. I didn't mention this. If you don't know this, the high frequencies are out here and the lower frequencies are in here, simply because you're subtracting the carrier frequency from the, or you're finding the difference between the carrier frequency and the sideband frequency. So farther away, higher the pitch. And this is really tight, you don't hear the high pitch. And as you tune, this response curve is moving back and forth, you could tune it like this. Want to hear that? What's that sound like? Let me get it in the middle first.
would it be better to even go one step more
Okay,
local
in
and
the
to
middle.
be focusing on different public health units?
Some other weird
depending
things
on
going on
the
with this
regions
radio
in
too.
Ontario,
But now I'll
or
tune
do
just to the edge.
provinces have generally a good grasp of what's being reported?
So now you see the bass in her voice has disappeared, and there's a lot of high frequency stuff, a lot of shrill stuff, and that's because we're now listening over here, where all the high frequency shrill stuff is in her voice, and the lower stuff we're sacrificing now. We're not hearing that so much. What's all this about here, Jim? What are you trying to do? So part of what I'm trying to do is teach myself to become very hawkish over hearing these things and realizing what it means. You know, here's the thing. Fixing TVs, I used to do that when I was a kid. Kind of easy, because there's an awful lot on a TV to figure out what's wrong. You got a picture, you got sound. The picture can be knocked off in various ways. Those ways all point back to certain kinds of problems, almost always a failed tube in a TV. Like that. Almost always the hard-working tubes again, the horizontal output tube and stuff like that. With a radio, all you've got is sound to listen to. That's all we've got to, without using instruments and without doing all that kind of work, to kind of sort out what might be wrong with a radio. So I'm very hawkish about teaching myself to pick up these cues, which is why I'm dwelling on this, talking away, not really getting anywhere. So the other thing is that hum. Whoop, where'd it go? That hum.
Professor, thanks so much for your time and expertise this morning. Yes, thank you. Then again, Dr. Dion Ailman, an industrial engineering professor at the University of Toronto.
Now, is that hum because there's a noise signal there with that hum in it? Try another station here. Oh boy, listen to that. Yeah, and listen to the hum. What the heck? I don't think that's a hum. I think that's an oscillation. Okay, so there's a lot of things pointing back to some kind of feedback situation in a radio. Did I fail to notice this before I put it together, or was it? It sure sounded okay to me. I mean, this is kind of obvious stuff here. What I'm hearing now, something must have happened when I put the radio back together. By the way, the clock has passed the test. No, it's not 20 after 5 here today. It's 8:20 in the morning right now. But I did run the clock for hours, and it actually keeps pretty good time. So I'm going to take this radio out of its cabinet, and we're going to see if maybe something happened to it. And I'm just going to let the video roll here, because this will just take a moment to do. So the website I showed you, if you've already gone and checked it out, there's another website I'm aware of that did a very early detail. These are serious websites, by the way. These aren't fly-by-night things. There's another one which gives it was first put together much earlier, about a week earlier, I'd say, and its predictions are harrowing. And it's being updated daily, and it's still there, and it's still harrowing. These two websites do not predict the same kind of thing happening. Now, you put a nice long cord here on there. In Canada, what we've been told is predictions really can't be made all that accurately. As much as everyone's trying to do it, it's just loaded with problems trying to make a really accurate prediction of all that stuff. Okay. A quick look. Let's just take a quick look, 'cause just maybe something's hanging out down here. What would that be? I would be suspicious of what I did up in here. Let's just take a close look and see it. Something is not quite what I thought it was. So just wiggling things to see if anything. No, everything seems tight up there. Seems good. So I took this capacitor out of this position here. But in the instructions, or in the schematic, it shows this to be a 0.01 capacitor. As luck would be, the actual number on here appears to be gone, and then this blob and other stuff is here. But if I had to take a guess based on what I can see on here, I would guess it's a 0.1. 0.01, 0.1. This looks different from all the rest of the parts that are in here. I'm going to put a 0.1 across this and see if that doesn't change the operation of the radio a lot. 0.1. I don't think I have too many of those 0.1s. I have this one. So I think what I'll do is I'll play the radio. This one side just goes to the chassis. And the chassis can be a monster when it comes to a screw sticking out here. There's a screw here that was never set. Excuse me while I get totally distracted. Huh. Yeah, it's just not screwed down. This is holding the capacitor. Why would that be the case? It's cross-threaded. That's a little better. Well, I don't know what happened there. So I'm pretty sure I can get away with just doing it like this. We'll see what happens. Okay, everything's ready to go. Again. What's that? So I need to pick up something here. I need to pick up a signal. The radio on its side, the antenna is not so efficient, I guess.
Otherwise, it's not
Oh, what was that? Something going on here. Something mechanical is going on. Let me flip this up again. Easy, man. You're gonna get a shock. Take it easy. Just pushing on the capacitor plate here. Yeah, that screw I just tightened up.
Getting your CERB. So that is something that is certainly an issue, and if you're going to do things by the book and in a legal way, you should not be getting or applying for the CERB if you have income from your employer.
So why don't they say that? They say if you are unemployed.
So the CERB is the Canadian Emergency Something or Other benefit that the government has put together to blast money into the population. And of course, applications just opened up this week, and I guess people are having trouble. And you just got to wonder why people phone a radio show to talk about this stuff. Why don't they phone the authorities and talk about the problem? Why do they phone a radio show?
I appreciate it.
Because they just want people to know they've been hurt. People seek validation of all sorts of things all the time. We all do, right? And, you know, give them the validation. People feel better then. Can move on.
To that, if it comes out in the wash, you should be fine. But if you ultimately get money that you should be getting, yeah, you could have a problem. One quick question for me before we break.
So I can hear the garble here.
When the payments start arriving later this week, will there be taxes taken off the initial payment, or is that going to be down the road? No, there will be taxes taken off the initial payment, and just like with EI, when you get EI, you get less taxes. So yes, it won't be the full $500. It will be less the taxes. Appreciate that. 416-870-6400. More of your questions for Lior Sanfuru, employment lawyer, partner.
Something else that's a little loose on this.
It is 8:30, and with a check of chopper traffic, once again, Kimberly Fowler.
Well, thanks, Mike. Looking here,
That's chopper traffic in Aurelia.
Parkway, two problems now. South vehicle is blocking the left lane. Other than that, the rest of our 4 series highways.
I'm afraid that's the big city of Toronto they're talking about there.
Here it's some road work. West.
Now, I'm going to switch cameras here. And we're going to take a look at this from above. Uh-oh. Focus problems. Really? Maybe we can just do this. Now when I tune the radio, the whole capacitor moves around. Back and forth a little wee bit. Push it here with my finger. I need some. Do you see anything happening up here? Move it again. So that screw there looks loose to me too. What's that? What's that? What is that? It looks like black tape. Right on here. Could be this is an unusual way to connect, maybe. Let me push this thing again. What happened to the effect?
What's your question for Lior?
My question to Lior, thanks, Professor, and a question
effect is gone.
Because I have to order EI, then that's what they mentioned the Venus fund. Should I get any trouble? I mean, one of them automatically cancels. How does that work?
Tune the radio.
Yeah, strictly speaking, if you've applied for EI, you shouldn't be applying for the CRB. The hope is if you've applied for both, the government figure it out and they only pay you one. The way it's supposed to work is that if you apply for EI before the 15th of March, you're going to get EI. If you applied after the 15th of March, then the government should automatically actually pay you the CRB. But if you've actually applied for both, if you end up getting both, then you should deal with the government about how you return some of that money. But I do think they're going to be able to figure that out on their end, so you don't get both and you only get one of them.
Oh, I see. If I get EA, I can...
Okay, well, the government explained that if you've lost your job and you've applied for unemployment insurance, you've done it quicker than the government could make a move on getting this other benefit put in place. The other benefit is to usurp your unemployment insurance. You can't afford to use the unemployment insurance system in this situation. It's just too clumsy a system, you know. It's used to dealing with hundreds and thousands, not tens of thousands of people. So, but if you manage to make your application, you're wondering, what do I do now? So the government is automatically flipping any unemployment applications into applications for this other new benefit. And if you're not Canadian, you don't care, really. And if you're Canadian, you probably know this anyway. It's not that complicated. The government's making it quite simple for people, actually, to do this. And it makes you wonder, why is it complicated all the rest of the time? So I'm just looking at this for anything obvious up in this area here. And now I'm going to flex that capacitor. And we'll see if anything's moving in here that I can spot. I don't want to be touching the chassis when I just want to touch it in one spot here. Okay. And now I'm going to move the big capacitor. Oh, turn up the radio so we can... I don't see anything moving. Oh, I retuned it there. Maybe I'm getting a false impression of something here when I'm grabbing the wheel with my hand. That's having an effect. No, there's still something there. I put my hand on the chassis at the very moment I touched that wire. Fooled myself there for a minute. I wonder if it's just, am I making plates go into contact on the capacitor? Shouldn't be able to do that by moving this, but maybe we got some stuff underneath here. Maybe we'll find it. got to be something to do with the capacitor. Could it be I'm varying the capacitor frame's connection to the chassis? It's got two pretty potent screws holding it in. One of them I just tightened up. How could that be the problem? Okay, so what happened there? Could have been anything from I may have bumped the volume control to who knows what just happened there.
Maybe then you qualify, or to consider this concept of constructive dismissal because they changed the terms of employment. But beyond
Okay, this is
that,
good.
those are the-
I like how it's working now.
For example, I originally asked them for my employment because I wouldn't be getting enough hours because there's nothing on my schedule.
Well, but again, to the extent that they still want to pay you right now, then the record of employment would not be given. If they decide to lay you off for no hours, then at that point a record of employment has to be issued. But I think your best recourse right now is let's see what happens over the next day or two. That may solve the problem and still allow you to work while qualifying for the benefits from the government.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. One last one from Tom. Tom, what's your question?
Good morning. I'm calling from Muskoka. It's a seasonal area, and there's some folks, quite a few folks actually, that get laid off for the winter anyways, and they're already on EI.
So you can see what's happening is that the government systems are slow because they're complex, because they fit real life, and real life is really, really complicated. So you can easily make a government system that suits 90% of the population, but the last 10% require 10 times as much effort to solve inside these systems. That's just the way it goes. It's just the way things go. So in a panic situation like we're in now, there's no hope for the government to resolve all these fringe issues that you hear people like this calling in and talking about. You know, my circumstance is unusual. Well, guess what? You're going to end up having to figure it out for yourself. And I think the government in Canada anyway is really making it clear every day. Whatever can be done will be done. So eventually these people who are kind of falling to the side of the road, they'll be picked up one way or another. But wow. And if we hadn't done that, if Canada had decided let's just let our normal government systems handle the situation, these super systems have the high potential of failing also. So wow. Yes. It's a slow-moving disaster. The thing is like a bulldozer. It just keeps pushing the dirt. It's not very exciting to watch. Not a lot happens in a short period of time. Today's pretty much like yesterday, but it really isn't. The bulldozer's on the move. The ever-increasing bulldozer. Well, I don't know what to do here, because now it seems to be okay again. It sounds good.
Right in toward the downtown core. West Street of it with some Churchill toward the Ford Drive area right by the overpass. There's a construction blocking the left lane. We also have southbound on the L and the off-ramp to Yorkdale. That is construction blocking the right lane there. Pizza Pizza is now offering free delivery. Order online on the Pizza Pizza app and use promo code DELIVERY. Plus you can request safe contactless delivery now at Pizza Pizza. I'm Kimberly Fowler with Global News Radio, 640 Toronto.
Fee for up to 12 months when you open a new account. Conditions apply. With your forecast, here's Jill Taylor.
Minimal contact. Tim Hortons, proudly serving our communities.
This is not the time to get messed around by an insurance company when it comes to your disability rights. Normally the insurance companies rely on fear tactics to make you back off a claim. They'll deny your claim. They'll cut off your payments and hope that you're afraid enough that you're not going to do anything about that.
Well, there's definitely something wrong. I still hear the sound quality is not clear like it should be. there is still something going on in here. Whatever it was that was going on here seems to be gone now. Goodness knows what that was. But it appears to have disappeared. I've monkeyed it away. I don't like having those kinds of things happen. I'd much rather come to some conclusion about what has happened. Okay, enough of the rather bad camera work here today. Well, I'm going to stop for a little bit, take a little break. I think I'm going to apply a signal generator to this and listen to that. Do a little signal tracing, see if I can find a spot where things go downhill, where the sound quality goes down, and there's just not a lot left in this radio to change. Really, I should just go change the last two capacitors, but I don't like shooting in the dark like that.
It is day 2 of applications for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB. People with birthdays in April, May, and June can now apply for the $500 a week Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Speaking on the morning show with Mike and Sapria, Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson told us so far Canadians are eating this up.
Yesterday alone, 794,725 Canadians applied. Those are just Canadians who were born between the months of January and March, because there's such a demand for this program.
Secondary students and people working with seniors in long-term care situations. He says more information about the updated eligibility will come down shortly. We do know he's scheduled to speak again at 11:15 this morning. We will carry that live for you right here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto. Turns out Canadians are not only worried about getting COVID-19, but also very concerned about their economic future and that of the country. Global's Sarah McDonald with the details from this latest Angus Reid poll.
Of more than 2,000 Canadians surveyed last week by Angus Reid, nearly 90% expect the worst is yet to come economically, with nearly half of all households surveyed already losing income.
Of course the worst is yet to come. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. If people are asking questions to which the answers are completely obvious to everybody. And it's weird. People are hoping somebody will tell them it's not so. But this really isn't happening. This isn't true, what's going on. And, people want to live in denial. So the other day I was quite upset when I was working in here. I'm sure it was quite apparent on the video. That was me. I realized this. That was me coming to terms with and accepting that my future is not going to be what it is. What it was going to be, I don't know what it's going to be. And just accepting it. Accepting that the things I thought would happen next probably won't. Something else will. So accepting that is important. I want to get through that. I think I did. Now it's more a question of what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Just like everybody. I don't know. Don't know right now. Keep options open. Seek information. Try to get the clearest, truest picture of what is happening. And it's not so much about the V thing. I mean, we all know what's happening with that. It's what's happening with everything else. So I'm going to fatten up that capacitor. That was my plan, and I never fulfilled that test. Let's do it. Makes a difference. Let's see.
He's also asking people to consider takeout.
Takes the pressure off the retail system as well, and also puts a little bit of money into these restaurants that are struggling.
It's important to keep traditions alive this weekend, but those families to stay Global News.
hours at 10:30, Ontario reporting 309 cases of COVID-19. That's the lowest one-day increase since the 31st of March. There have been 13 overtests that bringing the provincial count to 132 at long-term care facilities. And the Major League Baseball.
I'm not sure what to make of that.
Because of COVID-19, not much we know, but the MLB is now considering its last plan to get back on the field. Plan B considered all 30 Major League.
I wonder if there isn't a capacitor inside this couplet that may be also involved in what I'm hunting here. It just seems to be like a mishmash of distortions and just things aren't quite right. Look at the schematic and we'll study this guy a little more and see if I can't pick off one or two things that might be responsible, and then mess around with them. See what happens. Okay. Just listen to this though. That's the radio playing, and then I'm going to put my finger on the chassis. But putting my finger on the chassis, to me, increases the kinds of problems I'm picking up on. And that kind of goes to this idea of that bigger capacitor draining out the chassis. You'd be fooling around with... which one? This one. This is the one I'm paralleling with a 0.1. I'm listening to the radio here while I'm doing this. So let's start figuring out who might be a bad actor here and who can easily be replaced too. I'm gonna guess. Oh, so this resistor's inside there. This is inside. This is outside. Wow, it's not easy to do here, to pick this thing apart. This one might be an actor in this. It's hard to spot, but here's the B minus. So it's right to the B minus from here. 3 and 4. 3 and 4. You have to cut lead 3 and then bring in a new capacitor external and hook it up to lead 4. Look at where lead 3 is going, and from where lead 3 and 4 are going. Parallel it and then cut this wire here. I could do that one fairly easily. And a wild guess here. These ones, I don't know what to think of them. That one. These ones are on the audio side. And it's just possible this is, like this one's down to the B minus here. That's interesting. The B plus gets to the plate through this very large resistor. Well, I'm going to take a shot at this one. Leads 3 and 4. 220. That's what I'm going to do. Luckily, they've installed this with the lead numbers right on top. You can practically see them where you are in the camera. 1, These are almost shorty here, 1 and 2. They're not, but they're really, really close. So is 5 and 6, you're just a fraction apart. 3 and 4. So this is a ground here. This is the signal in. Signal in to ground. 3 and 4. Okay, so 3 and 4. Before I make a terrible mistake here, I'm going to turn the power off. So 3 and 4. So between 3 and 4, there's nothing but that capacitor. If I cut 3 and then attach capacitor to where, so if I put a capacitor across the volume, I am replacing the 220. The 220 across the volume and cut leg 3. Okay, seems okay to me. 220. 220. 220 across the volume control and then cut lead 3. Cut lead 3. Leave it in here for now. Bend it where it won't get pushed around. This gets pushed around. Put the radio back in the cabinet. This gets pushed down. Doesn't seem to do anything. Okay. Now, is that going to make any difference? Wow, I'd be pretty impressed. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see what it does. It can be hard to know what it does unless there's a dramatic change. Some of the distortion I'm hearing can easily be coming from the speaker itself too. Well, I didn't break it. Seems hugely different.
For my trade, as an example, I can be in as many as 8 to 10 buildings in a day. If I'm on the overnight call tech, if I'm on that 32-hour shift, that number can be more than double. Techs often have to interact with multiple people on one site, which makes the risk of us passing something on very large. That, to me, speaks to that, the iron ring that Ford is trying to put around our vulnerable people that are in these long-term care facilities, and how difficult it is to crack down because there's so many different holes in the bucket, to use an analogy, where, this virus can get in.
Yeah, this is a challenge, right? The iron ring is only so solid in some ways, and this is not, this is not a knock at the Premier or anybody else, right? It's just, we're now realizing or actually seeing how vulnerable the system can be, especially when you have to imagine that for those who are living in retirement homes, for example, you'll have actually staff in the home who provide care to some of the residents, but residents have the right.
Capacitor helps a lot. So what I was doing there, discovering that if I inject more hum and crap into the chassis by touching it, comes out the speaker.
So we have one home, for example, that has 250 residents. They
if
have
I put this capacitor in, and it's tricky to make sure it's in contact.
Coming in every day, and then there's also private care workers. So there's a lot of foot traffic that we can easily limit in a hospital where we control all of our own staff, but you can't really do that, especially in a retirement home. Hence.
Wow, I've never given too much consideration to these capacitors that drain the chassis. Along the way, I just been, doing the usual thing. Now I realize, wow, this is a really, really critical factor. Getting there's a 0.01 in here, which is what the manufacturer calls for. But clearly, a 0.1 is more effective. Probably the problem with the 0.1 is you can get killed from the chassis if you have a 0.1 in there. Part of the job of the capacitor, as I understand it, while it's trying to drain the signal out of the chassis, or ground it out to the B minus, is to not let the B minus voltage be on the chassis with any strength. So putting in a bigger capacitor, more strength to the chassis. So what I do with these kinds of radios, I don't know if I ever actually showed this on camera, but the last thing I do is I put a sticker on the back that says hot chassis. Danger hot chassis is what I put on the back. Okay, so I think I'm going to put this guy in here, and I think I will accept the risk. Also nip off this extra wire here. What happens if I grab this? Radio get noisy? Nope. Leave a little tail. Ooh, don't touch that shit.
COVID-19, they apparently didn't separate healthy from sick residents of their staff or staff.
Yeah. Yes, I'm afraid the V thing is going to cull the human population around the world. A cull is going to happen. It's just horrible. Yeah, put in the capacitor. Put in the capacitor. I'm going to recover this one and go somewhere else someday. We're going to spend one of these big ones in here. So my wife and I have taken to going out for drives. When the weather's beautiful, as it was yesterday. It's going to be again today, a beautiful sunny day. Jump in our truck and off we go. We drive the back roads. Actually, you know, because we go a little bit north, like we drive maybe 10 minutes north of here, and we're really into cottage country. It's a whole different life, just 10 minutes north of here. And we drive on lake roads, which are roads that wrap around lakes. Often they're dead-end roads. You get on them, they follow the lake shore, go around the lake maybe 3/4 of the way, and then they just stop. They just come to an end. The surprising thing about all these lake roads is there are thousands of people, thousands of houses. My wife and I never realized how many people live. And it's rough. It's a rough road. I don't even know how it could be plowed in the winter. Thousands of people live in these somewhat idyllic circumstances. You know, if you're looking for that kind of life, wow, on a lake. But when it's time to go to the store, you're going to drive for 20 minutes or half an hour to get to a decent store. So that's what we do, because we don't see anybody, we don't get into contact with anybody, we're safe in our vehicle. And we're not in any rush, so we can take these roads that go nowhere and discover stuff. Actually, I shot a little bit of video yesterday. Maybe I'll stick it into this video. Of course, it's springtime right now, and all the water levels in the lakes and rivers and ponds and everything is very, very high. Very, very high. There's a lot of water rushing around everywhere. I don't know if do I even have to solder that. That is a very surprising too to be driving along in those circumstances, and all of a sudden you see a $1 million mansion somebody has built essentially in the wilderness. Not really wilderness. There we go. That's a huge terminal here. Okay. So this should fix this radio up pretty nicely, I think. I just want this to be down under. Better go this way, all the way over this way. This one's going to get pushed also. This was not a good spot for it. I jammed it up like that. Just in there. I think it's okay. Power on.
And trying to get all this right. So I honestly, it moved me when I saw that, because it was totally unexpected. I didn't ask for that.
So this is a really good test. You say, can signals that have worked their way into the chassis affect the radio's operation, or is it successfully drained back to the B-? How do you do the test?
Dr. Suna, it's always a pleasure to have you be so generous with your time. I thank you so much for all the work that you and your colleagues do, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show again, and let's talk again soon.
Okay, it's back into the cabinet. for another listening test. We'll find out. We'll find out if I made it this time. I hope I did. I hope I did, because I got more interesting radios to work on. Okay, stick them back in the cabinet and we'll give another test. Okay, let's give it another go here. Hopefully the last go. Nice, eh? Nice chrome, all shiny. Yeah, still too bad. It's a little kind of dusty inside here. So this one will have two warnings on it. One warning will be that it's radioactive, and the other warning will be it has a hot chassis.
Welcome to the program. Good to have you along on this sunny Tuesday, April the 7th. Enjoy it while you can, going up to a high of 15 today.
Beautiful.
And we're going to see some showers in the evening. I was saying yesterday that I decided to take a 2.5-year-old prime rib roast. I know, it's disgusting, but it was frozen for 2.5 years. Listen, my social life wasn't as robust as I wanted it to be in the past, so it had just been waiting for the opportune moment, and then I was like, oh no.
.610, just barely hearable, audible. 590. And now, for the French station. Should be right in here.
Et en général, ils suivent les directives de leur rabbin. Or, un des grands rabbins de Bnei Brak, qui s'appelle Haïm, a recommandé les prières collectives à la synagogue jusqu'à la fin mars, en fait jusqu'à la semaine dernière.
Still needs a bit of a boost.
Pour échapper à l'épidémie. Finalement, le rabbin n'a pas eu le choix et depuis vendredi...
That's good. I think that's really good. Great. So I'm happy with the outcome. Clock, date, day of the week, everything. It's fantastic. That's a really great little radio. And I'm happy to see it go. So that's it. I'm done. I'm finished. Time to get another radio in here. I'll have to go pick one. Thanks a lot for watching the series. And we're on our way to the next one. See ya.